Welcome to the HR Spoonfuls podcast, brought to you by Andera HR, the home of Help Desk for HR.com and AI for HRHub.com, where you can find assistance from qualified human resources professionals and learn about all things related to the use of artificial intelligence solutions for your HR department. Now listen in as your AI-driven hosts, Alex and Ivy, discuss interesting and current human resources topics, one spoonful at a time.
All right, ready to dive in. Today we're looking at something kind of surprising with the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. We're talking about how someone without a disability could actually have a valid claim under the ADA.
Now, that does sound a little counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Right. You think disability, you think of, well, an actual disability?
Yeah, you'd think so. Right.
But stick with me because this is where it gets interesting.
Right, all ears.
These are what are called regarded as claims.
Regarded as, okay.
And they basically mean that you could be discriminated against based on how someone else, like an employer, perceives you.
Oh, I see. So even if you don't meet the legal definition of having a disability.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Like imagine say you're hiring for a customer-facing job, right? And someone walks in for their first day, and they have a pretty prominent facial scar.
Okay, I'm following.
The scar doesn't affect their ability to do the job at all, but you, the employer, you get nervous about how customers might react.
Yeah, I can see how that would happen.
So instead of letting them work the register or whatever, you stick them in the back, like in the stock room or something.
Oh.
And that's where you run into trouble.
Yeah, that sounds like a classic regarded as situation.
Exactly. You're making a decision based on, well, how you perceive that scar,
Right.
not on their actual abilities.
And the ADA, it doesn't allow for that?
Nope, not at all.
Yeah.
And to prove it, the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission,
Right, the EEOC.
they actually sued a staffing company over a pretty similar scenario.
Oh, really? What happened there?
So this construction company was hiring welders, right?
Yeah.
And they were using an agency to find people.
Okay, makes sense.
One applicant, he went through the whole process, aced everything, the application, the interview, even passed his physical exam with flying colors.
Sounds like a good candidate.
Right. Totally qualified.
Yeah.
But then there was this medical questionnaire they had to fill out after they got the job offer.
Oh, one of those. Yeah.
And there's a little box to check if you had any, past injuries or anything.
I see where this is going.
And he's honest, right? He checks the box, says he had an old knee injury.
But it was healed, though, right? You said he passed the physical.
Oh, yeah. Totally healed. Needed 0 accommodations. Even had a note from his doctor saying he could handle all the climbing and whatever else the job needed.
So he was good to go.
Exactly. You'd think that'd be the end of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Qualified, cleared by his doctor.
Makes sense.
But the staffing company, they saw that checkbox and got spooked.
Oh, no.
Decided he was too risky, because of that old injury.
Wow, even with the doctor's note.
Yep, even with the doctor's note. They actually took back the job offer.
Seriously?
Yeah, left the guy high and dry. And that's exactly why the EEOC stepped in.
Wow, that's crazy.
Because, and they're very clear about this, the ADA protects you from discrimination based on how you're perceived to be disabled.
So it's not just about actual disabilities.
Right. It's about those perceptions. It doesn't even matter if the employer's fears are totally unfounded, like on this case.
So they can't just make decisions based on some, stereotype about what a past injury might mean.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's good to know. It's like judging a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Right? Except in these cases, the cover is just a big misunderstanding about someone's abilities.
Right, right.
In this case, it really shows why it's so important to focus on what someone can actually do, not on these outdated ideas about what disability means.
I agree, yeah. It's all about focusing on the person's ability to do the job.
Absolutely.
It's a good example, yeah. Really shows you how this stuff plays out in the real world.
It definitely changes how you think about, disability rights,
Right.
We tend to focus on, making accommodations for people with, existing conditions.
Yeah,
right?
that's usually how we think about it.
But these regarded as cases, they show that it's just as important to get rid of the prejudices that create those barriers in the first place.
It's like you're not just trying to level the playing field after someone's already been disadvantaged.
Exactly. It's about preventing that disadvantage from happening in the first place.
Which raises a really important question, How do we actually challenge those deep-seated assumptions about what makes someone disabled?
Yeah, that's a good question.
We use that word disability, but what does it really mean? Especially in a world where Everyone has, their own strengths and weaknesses.
It's almost like we get so caught up in trying to put people in categories, you know,
Yeah, I see what you mean.
instead of just recognizing that everyone's an individual.
Right, and we make assumptions based on appearances, but those assumptions, they rarely tell the whole story about what someone can or can't do.
That's so true.
It's about moving away from that, the medical model of disability.
Where you're focusing on what's wrong with someone.
Exactly. And embracing a more social model, one that recognizes that a lot of the disadvantage comes from, well, from the barriers that society puts up.
So instead of asking what's wrong with you, you're asking,
What's preventing you from participating fully?
wow, that's a really powerful shift in perspective, isn't it?
It really is. Takes the focus off of, limitations and puts it on creating an environment where everyone can thrive.
And it makes you think about, like, how important empathy is in making workplaces truly inclusive.
Oh, absolutely. Empathy it's essential. It lets you connect with people on a human level.
Instead of just seeing them as, a coworker or an employee or whatever.
Right. You see them as a person.
Exactly. And you understand their perspectives, you can appreciate what makes them unique and valuable.
And in the context of these regarded as claims, empathy means putting yourself in the shoes of someone who's being judged based on a misperception about them.
So you're not just, like, dismissing their
Hey,
experience.
not at all. You're trying to understand it.
You're asking yourself, okay, am I letting my own assumptions cloud my judgment here?
Exactly. We have to move past those, those knee-jerk reactions, the fear, the prejudice.
And recognize that everyone deserves a fair chance.
That's what it's all about. Creating workplaces where people feel safe being themselves, where they don't have to worry about being judged or discriminated against just because of someone's misperception.
It makes you wonder how often this kind of discrimination happens without anyone even noticing.
Oh, I'm sure it happens all the time.
Right. Like, are we all guilty of making these snap judgments sometimes? Based on how someone looks or,
I think it's more common than we'd like to admit. Yeah, those biases, those assumptions, they often work on a subconscious level,
So we might not even realize we're doing it.
Exactly. We might not be aware of how our perceptions are influencing our decisions.
Kind of scary when you think about it.
It is, yeah. But it's why it's so important to talk about disability openly and honestly.
So we can learn and, educate each other.
And challenge those discriminatory attitudes whenever we see them.
It's about creating that awareness so people feel like they can speak up, advocate for themselves and others.
Absolutely. And we all have a responsibility to be allies, to call out that bias when we see it, even when it's, uncomfortable.
Because sometimes those conversations, they're not easy.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
But they're necessary.
Yeah, it's really about creating a world that's more inclusive and equitable, where everyone has a chance to show what they can do.
Absolutely. And it's not just about protecting people from discrimination. It's about, recognizing the potential that every single person has.
Yeah, when you create those inclusive workplaces, those inclusive environments, you're not just doing the right thing, you're doing the smart thing.
Exactly, because when you have all those different perspectives, all those different experiences, you get better ideas.
Right.
You get more creative solutions.
It just makes everything better, right?
Yeah, it really is a win-win for everyone.
So I think as we're wrapping up this deep dive into these regarded as claims under the ADA, the big takeaway here is that this kind of discrimination, it can be really subtle.
Oh.
It can even be unintentional.
Yeah.
Right. It's not always about someone being, like, malicious.
Right.
It's about those biases we talked about, those unconscious biases.
And those outdated ways of thinking about disability.
Exactly. And we all have to work on challenging those, all of us.
That's the key, yeah.
So the next time you meet someone, and maybe you get that, that first impression that they're different in some way.
Right.
Take a second, just a second, to think about your own assumptions.
Yeah, check yourself.
And choose empathy instead of judgment.
Because you never know. You might learn something.
Absolutely. Because real inclusion, it starts with every single one of us.
That's a great place to end it, I think. Thanks for having me on to chat about all this.
Oh, thanks for coming. This was great. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to HR Spoonfuls. For more episodes like this one, drop by helpdeskforhr.com or AIforHRhub.com and subscribe to our newsletter to receive HR updates and notices when new podcast episodes are posted. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and will join us again soon.